Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Hearth of Britannia. It's time for another Dragon's Meet. I am Rustic Dragon, your host for this evening's rabble. We are here to talk about several things. We're going to be talking about justice, Segi, the next virtue in our discussion of all the virtues, and we're also going to be talking about Hobloth 4 and Castleton, and the listing of Castleton and how that may be affecting Hobloth 4 and plans that we can put together to try to make Hobloth 4 as good as possible. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to thank all of my Patreon backers out there for helping me do all kinds of wonderful things like buy ingredients and get extra technology and cover hosting costs and all that fun stuff. You guys have completely taken the burden of running the Hearth of Britannia off my shoulders, so I'm very thankful for you. Additionally, you kind of make sure that I keep pumping stuff out, or at least telling people what I'm working on, so it's not all behind closed doors. So thank you so much for those of you out there, my Patreon backers. I love you, and hey, as always, if you want something else from me, let me know. I'm happy to take your feedback into consideration. Those of you who are not Patreon backers, please consider becoming a Patreon backer. It entitles you to an additional rabble each month where we can talk about all kinds of things that I don't tell people. Just spoilers. Spoilers for events, spoilers for the cookbook, spoilers for things that I'm working on, fun stuff like that. Excuse me. All right. So I think I've thanked everybody that I need to thank. And, of course, thank everybody who's not a Patreon backer. You don't have to be a Patreon backer. Dragons Meets will always be free to everybody who can make it. Just because I have additional rabbles for Patreon backers doesn't mean I will never get rid of regular Dragons Meets. That's what I needed to say. So those of you out there in YouTube land, if you're watching and you have something that you want to say regarding the topic at hand, if you want to talk about justice, if you have thoughts on Hobloth 4 or Castleton, if you just want to talk about Adam's beard, just send me an email, rusticdragon@gmail.com. I do not check the chat while I am, with the exception of the one in the Google Hangout. I don't check Facebook. I don't check the comments. rusticdragon@gmail.com is the single best way to get what you want to say heard. My phone right here will give me a notification. I will read your comment on air. If you don't want me to read your comment on air, please start with, please don't read this on air. So yeah, rusticdragon@gmail.com anytime you've got a question. And this goes for people watching after the meet. If you are watching this 2 years later and you have thoughts, send me an email. I will read it during the next Dragons Meet, or I'll at least personally respond to you. So yeah, let's keep the conversation going whenever that is. All right, I'm very, very, very happy to be here tonight. I'm in fantastic spirits. I've started biking to and from work. I have all this extra energy, and I don't know what to do with it. So I will channel it at you guys. And speaking of you guys, let's take a moment to introduce everybody who's here in the Hangout with me. We've got some great people here, some people that, some familiar faces. Everyone's a familiar face to me, but not everybody makes it every time. So let's take it from the right. You guys know me, Rustic Dragon, ONBE, Royal Warrant Holder. I am here for you. I'm Rustic Dragon, proprietor of the Hearth. Vanzalar, would you like to unmute and introduce yourself to everybody?
All right. Hi, I'm Aaron. David dragged me into this group, and I just kind of like hanging out and talking with nerds. Pardon the background noise. I'm at work, and that's the HVAC system because we have to keep the lab pressurized. Otherwise, the bad stuff that accidentally gets released everywhere, as opposed to just poisoning me. So.
Excellent. It's fantastic to have you here. Your lab coat adds a lot of weight and authority to this Dragons Meet, so you can be our expert witness if we really need to do anything there. All right, so Vanzalar, would you like to go next?
Hey, this is Paul, also a Vanzalar, hanging out at the Dragons Meet and to do other things at the same time. And glad to see everyone here. Excellent.
And you are welcome to do other things. You often do other things, and I'm always trying to see what it is. Lava, if you can hear me and you're all ready and hooked up, would you like to say hello to everybody?
Hi. Oh. I'm Lavacopter. I occasionally hack games. Yeah.
It's always great to have you here. Welcome, and welcome, welcome. Takis, I almost said Takis again. As we established before we started, it is somewhere between Takis and Tiakis. So it is Takis. How are you tonight?
Doing fantastic now that I'm finally done with work for the week. But other than that, finally in a position where I can actually join. So
Yeah, I just
that was
realized
good.
you're in a hotel. You're not home.
Yes. I'm over in New Jersey right now. Yeah, fun times.
You know, I saw this
Every single week of the
post
year.
the other day. Dennis, I think it was Dennis LeBay posted it. Was it Dennis? No, it was Dale Flatt, Captain Elad. If you've been to Hobloth 2 or 3, groundskeeper for Castleton, former sub pilot. What, Greg? What is this? Are you a pilot on a sub? What are you, sub? Word.
Planesman.
What was that?
You're a planesman on a sub.
Okay, retired plainsman. How about that? I learned something. That's fantastic. So Dale Flatt posted this wonderful, wonderful thing the other day, and it was a beautiful pizza made with Mexican cheese and spicy sauce and chorizo, literally covered in tacos. It was taco pizza, literally covered in dozens of tacos. But it's in Hoboken, and I said I was about to go on a road trip, but I'm not going to Jersey even for that. So my heart goes out to you, but while you're there, if you want to go to Hoboken and tell me how the pizza is, I would love to know.
I'd like to, but I got to get up at 5 o'clock to fly back there tomorrow, so.
Well, I guess, but pizza, okay. Sempiternal, how are you tonight? So you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Are you hardware muted by chance? Okay, well, you get that worked out and you can come on back. And it looks like Adam's having technical difficulties, so he can introduce himself when he comes back. All right, so I admit that I'm a little caught off guard today. Today's virtue discussion is going to be about justice. And of course, I can talk about, blue and yellow make green, truth and love. Justice is when you have to find, something in between truth and love. That's fantastic. I can talk about all that wonderful ultima ramification. We can talk about the mantra and all that great stuff. But truth is, I had no prepared statement for justice because David Peters, Beard Commander, Lord Joe 10 himself, his favored virtue is justice. So I was hoping that he would do it. I was already ready for David to go on a long rant about justice. So that being said, does anybody here have anything that they want to lead with respect to justice? And God, I hope so.
I'll go, if that's all right. So the interesting thing about justice is the way I've always a good idea about justice is, so we've talked before about the virtue of honor and what that means and all that stuff. So one way I guess that I like to look at it is justice is, while honor is personal on the individual level, justice is something I think that more has to be determined by the society on the society level. Like a society as a whole has to come together and determine what is just, if you will. Now it's possible, I think, so it's the question of is can you have a personal justice, or is it you just more incorporate the justice of your society into yourself?
That's a fantastic question. The first place that takes me is on a continuum of personal justice to universal justice, right? Is there first? I mean, it starts to get philosophical, which is what I was hoping for. On the far end, you ask yourself, so if we as a society are somewhere in between, right? My personal sense of justice, vigilantism or revenge, right, over here, and universal justice, like the things that every civilized society should agree upon, right? and then you've got societies that are dotted here and there. So what we may consider to be a nice uniform sense of justice, we always have to worry about enculturation and cultural bias and fun stuff like that. So I think a worthwhile question to ask is there universal justice? Is that really a realistic thing to think exists? And then also, vigilantism is, personal justice. Revenge, is that justice? In the grand scheme, in the capital J justice of kind of the Ultima universe, is there room for any of those extremes? You just think about it.
If I may, I can't see. To me, I can't see justice as a personal thing. To me, for justice, it has to be something that is right to more than one person, because otherwise you're just doing what makes you feel better. And is that really? Can you view that as justice, or is that more just kind of self gratification, as it were? I think justice, it has to extend beyond yourself. Me getting revenge, I may see that as righting a wrong, but really only to myself. And at that point, is it really, again, is that can we really call that justice at that point, especially if everybody else doesn't think so?
So here's an interesting question. If the rules of a game are established to be, these are the rules, and you follow the rules, but you exploit them, is that just? I think it might, might start to fall into not being honorable. But jumping back to what you were talking about earlier, in a tournament where we have rules, but a person can exploit the rules. A great example you brought up was, take our LARP combat, for example, where headshots aren't valid target. By constantly, sticking your head out, and kind of taking advantage of that. Is that just? According to the definition, because you're not breaking any rules, you would not be found guilty in a court of law. It's a spirit of the law question. So given that, would you consider abusing the rules in, say, a tournament? I shouldn't say abusing, but what was the term that you used earlier? It was kind of like a min-maxing thing. I can't remember the term that you used, but taking advantage of them, exploiting them, I think is what it was. Would you consider that to be just? I think you would certainly consider it to be dishonorable.
Dishonorable, possibly. Just, it depends on whether or not the rules were established by a single person, or if everybody kind of had a chance to put their input. Like if everybody kind of had a chance to review the rules and kind of get in and come to a consensus and be like, yeah, we're going to still, allow, okay, no headshots, and all this stuff. We've kind of all agreed to that. For, if someone's going to come by and exploit the rules and basically stick their head in the way all the time, so, and basically use their head as a shield in these LARPing rules, I wouldn't consider it unjust, but I would definitely consider it dishonorable. And I think, but it was just kind of like if just, some on high authority that, nobody really had any say, to why that person gets to make up the rules, we're going to come down and make that rule. And then people were to exploit it, right? Then it's kind of like, okay, there was no consensus on this.
Would you then say that justice requires democracy as opposed to monarchy?
Me personally, yes, I would. I would say that, although it is possible to, I think, that doesn't necessarily make a monarchy necessarily unjust, right? If on a society level everybody kind of agrees on the idea of a monarchy, right? So the monarchy is basically put in place democratically, if you will. But yeah, I think for justice, because all justice is, in my opinion, in my view, is just it's a social construct. It's so it's something that that has to be developed, like I said, by some sort of society, however large or small that society is. It has to be made basically by consensus of the group of people.
Certainly. So you keep saying, actually, just really quickly, Sempiternal, do you want to test your microphone? Still can't hear you. Ooh. Pirates of Oasis. So you keep saying consensus, Aaron, which is, I have a different C word for justice, and it's not cunt. When I think of justice, I think of the most important C word is context. If you look at the Justice Quest for Hobloth 2, and you look at a lot of the Justice Quests in the Ultima games, they all revolve around, they generally follow the same pattern, which is something happens, you know about this much of it, and it's your duty as the player to look at all sides of it. And then once you see all sides of it, you generally find that the course of action that was happening when you discovered it is blind to the context of the situation. And then, you know, it's your job as the player to inform everybody, then everybody goes, oh yeah, that would have been terrible had we done that. In Hobloth 2, Scott Jones helped, I think he you know, I shouldn't take credit for it at all. He wrote the majority of it. I just was a sounding board. He wrote this wonderful Justice Quest. And Hobloth 2 took place between Ultima 6 and Ultima 7 during this 200 years of this 200 years between Ultima 6 and 7, where if you read the manual for Ultima 7, the Book of Fellowship, it talks about how there were several skirmishes between minor lords. And Scotty took that and ran with it and made this wonderful Justice Quest where you've got all these minor skirmishes between lords, which means property is changing hands all the time. And in a true vassal sense of, you know, medieval, say Ultima, you know, it being a fantasy game, let's suppose that Ultima really was, you know, serfdom and lords and vassals and very, very medieval society. You know, basically, you've got people that are going to fall through the cracks there. So in Scotty's quest, you had this case where a guy was on trial, and I believe, yeah, he was ultimately put to death. But Scotty, as the magister, didn't feel, he always felt wrong about that. He didn't feel that that death was right. And the guy was put to death because he was hunting deer, and he had killed a deer, and then he was immediately arrested and executed for killing his lord's deer. The problem was, and you didn't, you know, and at the time, you know, this wasn't brought to light for lack of evidence. The lands that he was fighting on had just recently changed hands, and he actually had a writ from the previous lord who was defeated in a minor skirmish, stating that he had every right to hunt on those lands. But that evidence couldn't be presented in time because the magister wasn't well enough staffed to go do the investigation. And then the player goes, finds the writ, find that the person was actually well within his right to be hunting. The writ that he had said that he was totally allowed to be hunting, even if the property had changed hands, and that there was, you know, an allowance for that, and that the guy was wrongfully executed. And the player then would go take this document from the magister to Lord British, receive a reward to take back to the magister that would then be split between the player and the wife of the late person. And it's always about, in this case, again, it's following that paradigm of, you know, there's a little bit of context that you're given at first, and it's up to you to explore the greater context. And how that comes back to justice on the whole, to me, is it's, you know, being all about context. It's, you know, looking at the cultural context, looking at the generational context, looking at the, you know, it's the, you know, you walk a mile in someone's shoes. The classic Ultima example is, if a wolf attacks you and you defend yourself and you wound the wolf and the wolf is running away, do you kill the wolf? You know, and it's not just to kill the wolf, because the wolf is only guilty of being a wolf, right? That's the classic example in Ultima. You know, the context there being, you know, that's what wolves do. It's not breaking the law, right? You know, we can't decide that being a wolf is you know, something that you can't do. Similarly, how, you know, it's very, very dangerous territory to prescribe laws that dictate what people can and can't do based on culture, race, religion, and things like that. So you say consensus, I say culture. I'm sorry, I say context. You say tomato, I say tomato. You say tachus, I say tachus. It works. I guess that's what makes us the happy couple. But that is a totally different musical. Those of you out there that know what that is. But yeah, so what are you guys' thoughts on that? Any thoughts on context versus consensus? Can you have justice without consensus? Can you have justice without context? Any thoughts here? Takis, Lava, Patrick, Evangelar, anybody want to jump in? And I haven't heard from you guys. Any thoughts are welcome. Opinions are welcome.
Well, I'll say one thing. Can you hear me? Okay, cool. The one thing is that Plato actually wrote an entire book, The Republic, that was basically about justice. And the comment, the scenario that you mentioned, the classic wolf scenario, is basically what Plato's foundation of a just city was. And he goes through an entire scenario, and the question is the just person happier than the unjust person? And so he goes in and builds an entire scenario of the just city, where everyone is doing what they're best at. And so the person who is best at baking is the baker. The person who is best at defending the city is a guardian. The person who is the wisest ruler is the ruler. And that actually leads into the discussion of the philosopher king and all that, but that's a massive digression. But what he was proposing is that justice is inherent in the universe because of that. And then there's a lot of conflict between it. And basically what happens is it's not necessarily just what you're best at, because what you're best at may not be what you want to do. You may have the gladiator who's a phenomenal fighter. Well, he doesn't want to be a soldier, though. He wants to go bake bread. So as I recall, and I read this 20 years ago, and I haven't gone back to it since, shame on me, is that it is a mixture of the two, is that in order to have a truly just society, you have to have a framework, but you have to have a framework in which people are free to move about that framework as well.
Sounds to me like a little bit like context. The gladiator may be really good at gladiating, but if the extra hidden context there being that he really wants to bake bread, or in Ultima 6, Connor, the former fighter, really just wanted to be a humble fisherman. But I like that. I haven't talked about Plato's Republic since high school, so we're talking 2000. Interestingly enough, someone else just talked to me today about, hey, are you familiar with the Canterbury Tales? I'm like, that was about 2000 as well. So we're really throwing some stuff back here. Sempiternal, I believe your microphone is working now, because when you kind of readjusted your butt, I think I heard some stuff.
Excellent.
We can hear you.
Excellent.
So welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself now that we can hear you?
I'm Sempiternal Dragon, a huge fan of the Hearth, and happy to be here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. The Hearth is a huge fan of Sempiternal.
Thank you.
All right. And we have Siderius and Slidell there, down there in Texas. Hi, guys. How are you?
Hi, guys.
Can we get a pew, pew, pew from you?
Pew, pew. Can you hear me right, or do you hear a squirrel?
You sound perfectly normal.
No, okay.
All right. Hi, guys. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves for those watching who may not know?
Huh?
You're fine.
What?
We're fine.
Oh. Well, I'm Slidell, and he's Siderius. And we live in Texas. And we're here to hang out with you guys and see what else we can hear about hot blood and stuff.
Excellent. Well, speaking of Texas, the highest death penalty in the entire union. I think it was like 63 like per year compared to or something like that. I just saw a statistic on this recently. So like, what do we have there? Like, let's, talking about justice with a capital J, we've got states with death penalty, states without death penalty, and we have Texas with the highest death penalty. And so one of the questions becomes, how do you reconcile the fact that some states do it, some states don't do it, and some states seem to have a giant boner for it. I guess one state seems to have a giant boner for it. In all fairness, which kind of leads back to that question: is there really is the idea of a universal justice? Are there things that are universal axioms of justice? Is that really a thing? And would the death penalty fit into that? That's an interesting question. But as you approach utopia, then you start saying things, well, in a perfect world, no one would be doing the stupid shit in the first place. In a perfect world, someone could sleep with my wife and I wouldn't get jealous. No, I have no idea. Just talking out my ass here. So jumping on. So the first question that we have on every virtue is basically, what is the virtue and what does it mean to be that virtue? So what is justice to you and what does it mean to be just? I think everyone who's really had a thought about that has gotten to say something, but Siderius and Slidell and Sempiternal, now that you are back, and Patrick, if you want to say anything else too, that's your thoughts in addition to Plato's, guys, feel free to jump in before we ask the second question. Speak now or forever hold your peanuts. Okay.
I'm good, but I liked hearing capital J justice. That takes me back to philosophy. Doing some philosophy classes when I was in Florida State.
I started saying that because Richard would always talk about capital T truth when he would be talking. He'd be talking about soda, and he'd be talking about there's truth and there's capital T truth. I think he even says that in his book. So I've started saying that when I refer to virtues. It's you get compassion and then you get capital C compassion, right? So I think that helps distinguish when we're talking about something that's a little more lofty of an ideal. But you said so capital J justice. You want to talk more about that context?
Man, it's tough when you get into those type of questions. I would think that there's got to be some sort of capital J justice that's just like pure justice distilled, but with all the different societies. And I mean, I think most civilizations have arrived pretty similar. Just kind of punishments differ, but I think everyone there is a right and wrong to things.
Absolutely. I was going to quote my favorite quote about justice, but apparently it's debated who said it, and it's also debated how the quote goes. I've always heard the quote being, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." And I heard that attributed to Martin Luther King. And now I'm reading all kinds of things that it's like, apparently some people think there's the word elbow in that quote, like it. Like the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends at the elbow of justice. I was like, I'm really confused now. Who says that? The elbow macaroni of justice. But so I apologize that I can't properly attribute that quote because my cursory Google search is providing confounding results. But I wanted to throw that in there. But moving on to the second question that we have, when we discuss virtues. I like to compare each virtue to its matching virtue. I shouldn't say matching, but the one that it's most easily confused with, right? It's a lot of people, we have a trouble confusing honor and honesty, or and sometimes they fight each other, like honesty versus humility. Well, obviously I'm the handsomest guy in the room. I'm just being honest, but you're not being very humble, right? It's things like that. Yeah. So the elbow macaroni is the new sigil of justice. So No longer this. We're going to change that to macaroni. I think that's. I think Hobloth 4, that's going to happen. I have no problems with that. Somebody swipe the scales of justice, or actually, you know what? That's it. So the scales, when I get the scales of justice, they're just going to have macaroni all over them. That's what's going to happen. That's the answer. Final answer. Okay. But yeah, so we kind of hit on this before. Aaron and I did, or honor versus justice. And when I think of it, I kind of imagine, similar to what Aaron said. Justice tends to come from within, honor tends to come from within, and justice seems to be decided externally. It's not common to think about your own sense of justice for yourself. When you think about yourself, it becomes more of an issue of honesty or honor. And when you're thinking about how to deal with other people, it seems to be much more about justice or context. Sam, how are you doing, Vanzalar? Okay, for a second there, I thought that was not safe for work. Okay, and it may not be still. I mean, I don't know. It depends on, if that's a culturally offensive hand gesture from where you're from. But, so yeah, do you guys have any thoughts on honor versus honesty, or honor versus justice, and the important I can't talk. The important ways to distinguish between the two and the important differences.
If I may, so I think you kind of hit on the head with this idea of honor comes from within, but justice is more of an external force. Another thing to me is different. So as the great Jean-Luc Picard put it, there can be no justice as long as laws are absolute. I think it's kind of another good way. It's possible to have a system of honor that is absolute, but I think justice, for it to be justice with a capital J, as we've been talking about, it does have to have some flexibility in it.
So David and I were Joe 10, for those of you that know him, Beard Commander. We have had some discussions in our friendship about virtue, and we had this fantastic bro moment. It was earlier. It was either at the end of last year or at the beginning of this year. We're just sitting and chatting, and I don't remember how it came up, but I either asked him or he asked me. I can't remember who asked first, but basically, what is your virtue? What is your key virtue? What is the class that you play in real life? And he guessed that my virtue was honesty, and he was very correct. And in return, I guessed that his virtue was justice, and I was very correct. And then we both had this wonderful, super bro moment where we just decided to, we were talking about running off to Vegas and getting married and stuff. I'm joking. But it was interesting. And, unfortunately, because, he's not here to talk about his sense of justice, I want to talk a little bit about his sense of justice and how I was able to recognize it. Because his sense of justice, as I perceive it, is a little different than what we've talked about so far. It's a little more toward the personal code, toward the vigilantism. And what I mean is, he won't fucking let it go. If someone's guilty of something, he damn well makes sure that that's brought to light. He does, he really seeks equilibrium. He doesn't like to be wronged. He doesn't like other people to be wronged, and he has a hard time letting things go. But he also, through all of that, manages to remain very objectively fair. Again, seeking out that context. David, so a little bit about me. These aren't circles, but pretend these are circles, right? We've got the Venn diagram here. So if we have a Venn diagram, of circles of friends, right? If this is a circle of friends and this is a circle of friends, a circle of friends, and they all intersect here, that's me, right? I am always friends with one person in a circle of friends. And all of these crazy non-overlapping circles meet with me. The problem with that is most of the rest of the circle doesn't like me. I've been that way my whole life. I'm a polarizing person. And, you know, even with David's set of friends, I managed to have, you know, there are friends in David's circle, and David has experienced this as well. He has lots of circle of friends that either don't like each other or don't interact, that he very, very well handles. He is extraordinarily good at handling it, and he does it very fairly, which when I think of fair, you know, to me, fair is a very good synonym for just. It's, you know, there's a lot of different ways to equate fairness with justice, with justness. So fair, right? As you know, as Star Long would say, if I can't make everybody happy, I'm going to make everybody equally unhappy. David has a real knack for being fair in his crazy murder boner for justice vengeance, which I've always found to be very impressive. David does a great job of he's really, if anybody out there is looking for, you know, someone to bounce ideas off of, am I being crazy? Am I justified in thinking this, right? Is this nuts? Am I being way too angry about this? David will say no or yes. And he has no trouble doing that. And he seems to see through the heart of the issue very well. I'm very, very curious what's going to happen when David goes back and watches this and is like, oh my God, he was talking about me, talking about my friends. I'm curious to see, you know, if I'm remotely close. But yeah, so but I thought it was relevant because it comes down to that other thing, that other part of justice, which is the pursuit of justice, the relentless Batman-style pursuit of justice. I'm not going to let this go. This person did something wrong. Fuck statute of limitations. You did it. You know, I'm gonna, you know, like, you know, where does that fit into this discussion? Do you guys have any thoughts on that? So, statute of limitations. We all agreed that after 2 years, you shouldn't be guilty for that anymore, but you still did it. So is it just to continue to go after that person after the statute of limitations? Because, you know, we agreed that you shouldn't, but we also said that you did it. So that, I mean, these are questions. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Someone shoots my cat, but in 2 years they're home free, and I catch them in 2.5 years. You know, no, don't shoot my cat.
Well,
Well,
eye for
I
an
mean-
eye leads the whole world blind. So I think that's kind of why we set up the code of laws that we have, and we don't always agree or don't always feel it was a fair shake for everyone involved, but it's better than probably complete vigilantism.
Well, and I think going on to that, it's this idea that you know, there's this ideal of justice I don't think we're ever going to be able to meet, just because it's the real world. And you can trust me, I'm a scientist. I have a lab coat. There's a lot of things that look really good on paper, and when you write them all out, it's like things should be this way, and then you go do them in the real world, and they don't work, or they work way differently than how it did on paper. So you can only you run into this fuzzy barrier of you can only get really most of the time so close to kind of this ideal on paper thing that you do. So you know, for all this talking, I'll just throw this out there as a thought. My opinion is this kind of idea of perfect justice is something that we can aspire to, and we should aspire to it, but I don't think we'll ever actually be able to get it. So, any of you guys have a thought on that?
I would love it if someone else had some thoughts.
I have thoughts. Going back to what you were saying, the statute of limitations. Should they be, are they going to be held accountable for that after the statute of limitations is over? Well, the thing is that when they do something to somebody else, the effects that they have on that person are long standing. They stay forever. They forever change this person they might think differently. They might react differently. They may start hurting other people. So, or whatever, there's effects that will have this ripple effect on others. So where does it end? To what end, right? I don't know. Those are just my thoughts. I think they should still be held accountable. It doesn't matter how long. I don't care about the statute of limitations pretty much. I mean, it doesn't matter.
So I'm going to ask a question then. What about cases where someone does something and they felt horrible for it and it haunted them and they spent their whole life on the run, trying, and their life has been completely turned upside down, and for all intents and purposes, it was horrible. And then, they finally get caught, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years later, and their life is a wreck, and they've become a tremendously better person entirely because of the guilt that they carried with them for whatever transgression they did. And the judge sees that context and says, you know what? I'm not going to do anything to you because it all worked out. In a case like that, is it, does your personal sense of justice say, no, fuck that. The judge needs to punish that person and take away that newfound happiness that they have so they can feel what the person who was transgressed against felt? Or do you say, time served, they're now a better member of society? Is the duty of the judge in that case to the society and not removing this productive member of society, or is it to the person who had been transgressed against and owing them some sort of vengeance? Is there room for vengeance or equal, equal, what's the word? Equal pain, I guess. What is justice? Is it to the society? Is it to the transgressed? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I guess it depends on the crime, right? Because, I mean, if you took away a life, somebody's got to pay for that. Or there's got to be some sort of consequences. That's not how we humans are supposed to behave. But if you stole money, and, well, it depends who you stole it from too, right? I mean, you could have stole it from this greedy corporation, and then you've done something good with it for society.
So you're saying that a lot of it depends on the context.
Yeah, it does. I think it does. I think that's why we have judges. I don't know.
Is why Captain Picard said, there is no justice when the laws are absolute, because there's no way to account for all the context.
Correct.
So the last question, is when is it okay not to be just? And if anybody wants to jump in, please feel free. We have more than 15 minutes left to talk about justice. And again, those of you out there in YouTube land, if you want to join the conversation, please feel free to jump into this Google Hangout. You can jump in. There's still room. HearthofBritannia.com. All you need is a pair of headphones and a microphone. You don't even need a webcam. There's Lavacopter. Well, she may have one, but she chooses not to use it. So you don't need a webcam. That's fantastic. Hell, you probably don't even need a microphone because you can just write shit and hold it up to the webcam. So you just need one or the other. You can even jump in chat without a microphone or a webcam and talk to us. You are welcome here, even if we can't see or hear you. But otherwise, if you're too shy for that, rusticdragon@gmail.com. I will read your comments on the air, and you can add to the justice conversation. But the last question on the list is, when is it okay not to be just, right? So in Ultima, you always have to risk, losing an eighth, right? Well, there are certain cases where you can not be valiant and not lose an eighth. You know, if you're dying, you're allowed to run away from the fight. Otherwise, you lose an eighth in valor. You know, when is it okay not to be just? And to take one step back from that, I want to talk a little bit about, hey, Adam, I want to talk just a little bit about a very different sense of justice. Maybe it's more of a sense of honor, right? It's a different type of society. I'm going to talk about Conan the Barbarian. And I don't mean Arnold's Conan. I'm talking, you know, the original Conan books. And who is it? Was it Robert E. Howard? Is that right? I always get Robert Jordan, Robert Howard mixed up, and I always get embarrassed. Adam gave me the thumbs up, so Robert E. Howard it is. Thank you for that. Interesting thing is Conan was depressed. Conan was very unhappy, as Robert E. Howard, his author, was very unhappy. But there's a fantastic scene in one of the early stories where basically Conan strides in, you know, wearing his Conan underwear with the sword, his Conan sword, and he's standing in this giant marbled hall with a magister on the other side, and there's people all around, and Conan is standing there. And basically it's a sketch talking about how civilized people are less civilized than barbarians because they're protected by the artificial structure of society. They're protected by their positions. So to illustrate this, you know, Conan had done something that broke their law, right? It was, you know, this magister was attempting to mete out some sense of justice according to their society, and, you know, talks to Conan in a way that Conan didn't like. Basically said, you know, you can't do this and you can't do that, and you are a heathen and you're a terrible barbarian. And Conan pulls a sword out and cuts the motherfucker in half because you don't talk to Conan that way. And then he proceeds to kill everybody and leave because Conan. But the point of that is, the moral being that the barbarians are more civilized than civilized people is that barbarians don't talk down to each other. They don't give each other shit because you'll pull out a sword and cut your head off. So there's no sense of someone saying something to you that they get away with only because they're in a position to do that. You know, I love to talk about my father, whom I don't talk to anymore, but, you know, there's one of the things that my father is guilty of is he will say things to you because he's protected by his position. He did this to me a lot when I was younger. You know, I could sum it up as, if you were any other man, I would beat your ass for what you just said to me, but you're my father, so I'm not supposed to. You know, and he would get away with stuff like that. Conan would have cut his head off. So, you know, all of that coming back to this, where's the justice in all of that, right? Is it just, so if you speak to Conan and Conan kills you and then Conan is punished for that, is that just? This is a wonderful, you know, moral question here. What is the sound of one Conan chopping heads off? You know, it's a great moral cone to think on. But do you guys have any thoughts on this at all? Like, you know, civilization, not civilization. This is what would Conan do? This is great. Really, really curious what you guys think about that, because this is something that I lie awake at night thinking about. So I'm curious if you guys have any thoughts on Conan, or, you know, people abusing their positions, or, you know, abusing the rules. Aaron, you know, abusing their position, right? And David's here. So
to say, well, just to kind of answer your question, going back to your constant thing about context, in this particular case, I think for Conan, it's just for him to chop the other guy's head off. But if he's punished for it, I think the society that guy belongs to may actually see Conan's punishment as just as well. And that's what I said, justice is determined by the social construct that it applies to. And that social construct is also responsible for determining what is considered context.
So I want to respond to what you say, but first I want to welcome David and point out how cute it was, Meow's little bunny ears behind you. So welcome Joe 10 and welcome Meow if she wants to say hello or give you more bunny ears.
Hi, she ran off.
Okay. David, would you like to take a moment to introduce yourself since you just popped in?
If you don't know who I am and just started coming in here, I'm Jotin on the forums, or Joestin, as Paul put it. And yeah, just hanging out. And Conan does, because Conan do.
So actually, Aaron, if it's okay, I want to leave what you said trailing just so we can let David talk a little bit. I set it up so much that David was going to talk. David, we talked about you while you were gone. You're going to go back and watch the YouTube video and be like, "Oh God, you were talking about me. I hope I didn't say anything that was too terribly embarrassing." But I mentioned to everyone that your virtue is justice, and I want to hear you talk about justice. When I talked about your sense of justice, I used it to illustrate a part of justice that we hadn't talked about yet, which was pit bull style tenacity. Not letting shit go. And that kind of led into another, facet of the discussion. I had mentioned that you were tenacious as fuck, but you were also fair. Extremely fair. So if you want to talk about justice, David, the floor is yours and I'm excited to hear.
Oh, shit. Tenacious and extremely fair. That's kind of strange. For me, justice is a sense of balance. It's about respecting another person. It's about, like, if somebody says something really bad about you, yeah, you sort of want to go back and kind of like be super extra vengeful right back and just smite them where they stand. Basically grab any type of source you can get to just prove them that they're wrong. But at the same time, sometimes I got to sit there and kind of like cool off a little bit and let it slide, because along with being tenacious, you also got to be slightly understanding, which is where the fair part comes in. Because sometimes, yeah, because love is a very big part of justice. Yep. Because sometimes justice is also about perspective. You don't know where the person stands in that virtue, and you have to respect where they're coming from. So even though I'm tenacious, I'll only get super serious and super angry when I know what their intent is. And once I know what their intent is, that's when I go all full ham on them. Once I realize that the reason for their actions is because of malicious intent, then they don't deserve any compassion. But when it's because of a misunderstanding or they're trying to defend their reasoning, you got to lay off and come to an understanding. At least that's for me.
That is interesting. So we've spoken quite a bit about. We've kind of tended. We've generally established important C words tonight with respect to justice. And Aaron's C word was consensus. My C word was context. Anybody else want to volunteer C word? Vanzelar says the C word is Conan. I just love saying C word. But you brought up you again. I knew that I wanted you to talk about this intent, and that's very, very interesting. Intent. It is of course more context, right? Knowing the intent is understanding more context, which in general, guys, chime in, yes or no, show of hands, whatever. Does the intent? Does malicious intent justify harsher punishment? That's a really interesting question. You guys have any generally agree, disagree with that? Jump in. Anybody? Nobody? Okay, how about this? Let's get some participation. If you think malicious intent deserves harsher punishment, raise your hand. So we got 1, 2-ish, 3-ish. Okay, we got Vanzalar. So sort of. Okay. How about that? How about this? Can you think of an example where you can establish malicious intent, but also believe that it doesn't deserve harsher punishment for it?
Well, I would say when it's all about perception. You know, when you think you should do something and you think, or the person who's doing it thinks they're doing it because of justice, because they're doing something that maybe they feel they were wronged, but that's just under perception, while the others on the other side say, oh, they did it with intent, but they don't know the backstory. So it's kind of this kind of loop, because it's all about perception, really.
David looks excited to say something.
Right, but that's exactly the point. Understanding what the person's doing. You shouldn't, like for your case, if you're saying that the person's intent wasn't malicious, but the other person's perspective is saying that the other person is being malicious, that doesn't matter. The person who's actually doing the action itself, they didn't mean any harm. So that's when you kind of have to lay off a little bit. If the person's there just to say, if somebody's going straight up chaotic evil just cause, that's when I get angry. If somebody's being chaotic, no, just being like lawful evil just because they want to go ahead and get an advantage for themselves for no other benefit than to just get an advantage or anything of that sort, that deserves punishment. Because the intent is there and it's selfish. It's, again, with context.
I hear Kill Bill in my head for some reason.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
The movie, I hear Kill Bill.
Greg, you mentioned that the word that you've been mulling over is universal. Do you have some thoughts that have crystallized on that?
It's a combination of what we've been discussing already. There's things that I think have to be universal, that we all draw from in terms of deciding what's right and what's wrong. It's the context comes in the society that we're operating within. And the society we're in, that we're operating within, and the getting the whole story, so we can so whoever's making the decision on what is actually just is making a truly wise and informed decision.
Any thoughts, anyone?
I mean, yeah, 100% on that. It's unjust to act without knowing the full story.
What about when you can't know the full story?
Then you shouldn't be the one actually enacting the justice, because it's unfair, and that's not justice.
So, okay, I'm trying to think of an example. Like, what you may be the only person who's in any position of authority to mete out a punishment, or it's your responsibility to do so. Everyone's calling for someone's head. It's a PR nightmare. Shit's hitting the fan. The window is closing on it. You have to make the best decision that you can with what you got. Based, in a situation like that, do you act or do you not act if you are fairly certain that you don't have all the information?
I see where you're going with. In terms of like in corporate environment, then I guess you would have to, but that's not necessarily following justice. That's just following your job.
Okay, then. So,
but I will say, if there's a case of, like, say, you are trying to find somebody who you know somebody's murdered, for instance, and you need to find a killer, but you don't have all the information, but all these leads go up to this one individual, and he's being tried, yet you don't have all the intel to prove that it was him, but deep down you know. Can you still, point to him and say, like, this person needs to be punished, even though there's some doubt in your mind? And in that case, that's that's some super serious gray area. That there is no absolute in that. That I can't really think of a proper solution.
So here's another bit of gray area. Let's say, again, you're in a position, you're the one who's supposed to make the decision. You know that all the votes are not in yet. You know there's more information out there. You are not sure. You don't want to make a call. You don't want to give in to pressure. You don't want to be that guy. You want to recuse yourself, but you're also fairly certain that whoever's going to come in and make the decision for you, if you don't, is way worse and is going to do something way terrible, like absolutely head up his own asshole wrong. You know,
Then you would still have to. It would be still your responsibility if you know for a fact that the next person in line is going to screw it up, because then you're just lying to yourself.
I think that starts to become again a question of honor.
Exactly. And I lost to Nathan that, so I shouldn't be the one to talk to.
Yeah. So integrity, is integrity internal or is it external? Is it a responsibility to yourself or is it a responsibility to others? But that question may have to be held for next time, because it is 9 o'clock and it's time to talk about Hobloth. So hopefully you guys are excited to talk about Hobloth, because that's what we're going to talk about. That being said, the Hearth of Britannia is not completely inflexible. So if you guys want to keep talking about justice, I will totally do that if you guys are interested. So if there's any objection, please speak now or forever hold your C word.
I just want to kind of add just one last thing, just kind of not to discuss, but just to throw it out there, and also because I got to get going. So I'm just going to leave this and then log out. But this entire discussion about justice, we keep coming back to this one idea that it's somehow fair. And I'm going to say that in the great words of Bill Watterson, sometimes the world is just black and white. Again, it's ideally, basically this idea that I think we universally kind of agree that justice should be fair, but there are times where it doesn't necessarily have to be fair, if you will. So it's just this idea of decoupling this equality of what is fair is necessarily means that is what is just. So, yeah.
I think to couple that with something that my friend Chase really likes to say, and I'm not sure where he got it, and it's something that I like to tell myself a lot of times when I'm in a situation that's not fair, right? I don't deserve this, and he'll always say, "Deserve's got nothing to do with it." It deserve has nothing to do with anything. It doesn't matter what you deserve, So yeah, decoupling fair from just, I think, is, or decoupling, well, yeah, I think that's what I think that's a good way to put it. So I think it's yeah, and as Greg said in chat, sometimes the scales just can't be balanced, and that is something that humanity is going to struggle with until it, either destroys itself or the sun blows up. So,
I'm out. So, good night, everybody.
Thank you for signing with us. Good night. All right. So, without further ado, Bruce Bag, let's talk about Hobloth 4 and the ramifications of Lord British listing Castleton. So, by now, most of you should know that Lord British, I shouldn't say that he has personally listed it. I don't know if that's a complete accurate statement. There is as a Wall Street Journal, I think it was, there's a Wall Street Journal article about the property of Castleton being listed on the market for a record $45 million. It's record-setting in Austin because it is I believe the single highest asking price for property in Austin's history for all of Richard's lakefront property of Castleton, which is where we have the Hobloth events. It's where I can't remember his name. Steve Hempel runs the Lists on the Lake, the jousting tournament. It's the 1/3 scale should say model, but the 1/3 scale, or is it 2/3 scale? I think it's 2/3 scale. Globe Theater is on that property where the Baron's men perform Shakespearean plays, and all kinds of wonderful things there. The Boy Scouts use it, the SCA uses it, several nonprofits use it. It's a fantastic thing. I'm farting. So that was outstanding. I'm just not going to hold that anymore. So and Vancel is having a meltdown. I could just, hey, it's, you know, shit happens. So so that is for sale, and I am pretty confident that it's not going to be sold anytime soon, just because $45 million is a lot of money. If I had property that was really, really expensive and I wanted to get free advertising, I would list it for an insanely record-setting high amount of money and get a lot of free publicity for that. And then when I brought it down to a more reasonable level, oh no. Lava seems to be having connection issues and is going to drop out. But thank you for stopping by. Hopefully you can check out the YouTube video and email thoughts if you have them later. But we are always happy to have you. All right, see ya. Okay, so yeah, you know, it could be, you know, a strategy, right? So, you know, if I want to sell property for $1 and it's a record-setting property to sell it for $2, I'm totally going to list it for $3 and get all this crazy publicity. I'm not saying 100% that's what he's doing, but, you know, I think that's still a side effect of what's going on. That being said, I'm pretty sure that we'll be fine for Hobloft 4. People have asked me, well, what happens if the property ends up being sold, you know, before Hobloft 4? My answer to that is I will figure that out. I don't know. Worst case scenario, everybody gets their money back. I mean, you know, shit. But in the meantime, we're here to talk about it not selling until sometime in 2018 and or later, and how to make Hobloft 4 the best event possible. And we have had a Patreon backer rabble. So again, thank you to my Patreon patrons out there for meeting with me earlier. I think it was this past Sunday. We had kind of an emergency rabble where we, you know, the news had just dropped and everyone's panicking and we're like, oh my God, what does this mean? What's going to happen? Blah, blah, blah. And we all got together and we talked about rab emergency. That is the operative word. And, you know, we talked about what we could do to make the event absolutely as best as possible, by not just having another Hobloft, but how can we try to incorporate this into a last hurrah for Castleton, a Castleton wake, a farewell party? You know, what is it that we can do to, you know, just to say our goodbyes for Castleton? Who knows, right? There's been tweets about the city of Austin turning it into a park. That being said, if the city of Austin turns Castleton into a park, I'm probably not going to run events there because trying to deal with that bureaucracy will be a royal pain in the anus. And there's going to be all this code to get all the buildings out. I just don't see that working out for events. But, you know, who knows? In the meantime, though, you know, there's, you know, what can we do? What can we do to make Hobloft 4 absolutely fantastic? So while we've got some ideas on the drawing board already from the Patreon backer rabble, which I'm not going to repeat for secrecy, it'd be, you know, if you guys stumble upon them as well, we can totally discuss that. But I'm very curious to hear what you guys have to think without mentioning what was said in the Patreon backer rabble. Anybody out there, Hobloft 4 is going to be this November in Austin. And it will very likely be the last Hobloft to be held on Lord British's property, which is indisputably the single most appropriate place, with the exception maybe of Stonehenge or Skara Brae, that you could have an Ultima event. So, you know, it truly is the end of an era, but that doesn't mean that we're going to stop. It's certainly, if I have any say, it's not going to be the final Hobloft. It'll just potentially be the final Hobloft at Castleton. Of course, how funny would it be if the property doesn't sell until like 2021 or some shit, like Hobloft 9 there. Like, yeah, so sorry about that. So who knows? But that being said, under the assumption that this is the final Castleton Hobloft, how do we appropriately celebrate that? Slidell has said fireworks, and David says put fireworks in the cannons on the boat. Oh man, we should fucking launch that boat and shoot a flaming arrow into it on the lake. That's what we should do.
Fuck yes.
Sorry, Richard, we burned your boat down. Richard's like, that was cool. I've been like, let's go get the rose cabin. He's like, hold on, my shit's in there. I was thinking things like, paper lanterns and stuff, but Austin's always like trying to burn down and stuff. And there's always, I never know if there's going to be a burn ban or not every time I go to Austin. And sometimes there is a burn ban, but you can still burn stuff in metal, bins, and sometimes there's not a burn ban. And then I never know. I never know what type of fire I'm allowed to play with. So I'm always very conservative there. But I love those paper lanterns that float away. But I'm always worried that they're going to float away and then, light the whole countryside on fire. It may be a problem in November. It might not be a problem on November.
Let's say, would it be so dry in November for it to actually burn? I mean, we're trying to do it over a river, so maybe not.
It depends on which way the wind's blowing. It depends on how much it's been raining. Some context for those of you out there watching this later or in YouTube land or, have not been to a Hobloth. Hobloth 2 was held in November in Austin. It was a horrible 30 to 40 degree weekend. I think it didn't get above 50. It got into the high 30s, and it was just pissing the whole time. It was just that horrible. If you've ever pissed into the wind, I don't recommend it. When the wind blows and it just goes. Okay, if you've ever held a hose up into the wind, and it starts to blow and it makes that horrible. It was pissing the whole time, just like that. It was cold, and it wasn't pouring or anything, but it was very cold the whole time. And then, of course, the day after the event, it was this beautiful 72 degrees with a really warm sun. Hobloth 3, on the other hand, was held in June, and it was alternating between Jesus fucking Christ, it's hot, and it's absolute deluge. It rained so much that they actually closed the lake, which was wonderful in some ways because it was peaceful. It was also terrible in some ways because we literally were propping up tents with brooms to keep the water from collapsing in the roofs, and it was a giant mud fest. Bradford, you have to say moist. But yeah, so Hobloth is traditionally wet. Make your jokes. And even Hobloth 1 in Indianapolis, it was snowing. And there was a snowstorm that people had to leave early for because they had to drive home in snowstorms. So Hobloth is traditionally a very wet event. Again, make your jokes. It's all that beer. But obviously that is no valid predictor of what the weather is going to be in November. So I don't know if we can really plan on fire that's not contained. Trying to read the comments as they fly by here. Song Quest. David, did you say something to Song? What is Vancelar? Do you want to talk about Song Quest?
No, it needs to be quiet.
Okay, all right. Well, that's okay. Do you need to be quiet because of your domestic situation? Or are you just trying to keep it a secret? Quiet me. Okay, well, whatever. Yes. Oh, wife likes me quiet. Okay. I mean, if you're into that, it's fantastic. Again, it's all about context. All right, so maybe we should. So just things that kind of popped into my head, right? Several things that popped into my head with respect to farewell to Castleton. David, do you have the link to my eBay by chance? Can you? I will pull that up really quick. So at Hoblaw 3, okay. All right. At Hoblaw 3, the special trinket was the Origin Systems spoof patch. And the reason that that's, interestingly relevant here, I will pull this up and I'm going to pop that in chat. David, would you mind pulling that up and screen sharing, please, as you are my official screen sharer? All right, and David, could you, could you go to the third photo, please? Okay, so what you are seeing here, and it's hard to see, oh, David zooming, thank you, David. That's Lord British himself in 2001 when Electronic Arts shut down Origin. It was a very, very sad time. And he had these shirts made. They are at Castleton, so those of you that have been to Castleton, you should recognize that. And, the reason, most of you understand this, but for those of you that don't, the catchphrase for Origin is, "We create worlds." And Origin was founded in 1983 and shut down in 2001. So these Origin Wake shirts were made to, for this sad event, commemorating, I shouldn't say commemorating, but, you know what I mean, noting the closing of Origin. And if David, if you go to the next photo, this is actually me. Damn, I looked so good. I'd lost all that weight. And now I got fat again. But this is me in 2013, right? This is the last 24 hours of the Kickstarter. I'm sitting in front of my computer in my basement in Indianapolis. I've got my Darkwood Armory rapier hanging on the wall in the background. But I actually have one of these shirts, not because I was an Origin employee, but because I happened to find one on eBay. This is actually the night that I met David. It's so romantic. But David, can you go to the next photo, please? So back to the, oh, I'm sorry.
The original photo?
Yes, sir. So going back to the item, this was the Hoblaw 3 trinket. This was my rebuttal to the shirt, right? So this is the fan patch, right? This is what the fans say. It's not we created worlds. It's, we're not giving up. We're never giving up Ultima. We love this, 1983 to forever, that's the thing. And I'm wondering if we could spoof this yet again for Castleton. The difficult part is I have no idea when Richard got Castleton. I could certainly find that out. But I also don't know when it's going to sell. So if I get a shirt or something made, it could be like, Castleton, 1989, I think it was 1989, to, 20XX or some shit, right? It'd be really a shame if we got something made and it's the wrong date. So that's so there's the potential for that. And also, I personally have a problem with T-shirts as event trinkets. The patch was pushing it, and I didn't, it wasn't the official event trinket. It was kind of something I secretly gave to people. But if you look at my event trinkets, they're always something like an Ankh or a quest journal, something that you use for real. It's something that's in the game. It's coins, it's a sword, it's always a real object. So I'm not, yeah, the chat's fantastic. So I've always been hesitant to have a shirt. For me, I always found the T-shirt to kind of be the epitome of the lame thing you get at an event, especially if it has a date on it, right? You go to an event, you get a shirt, it says, something, something 5K, and it's got the date on it, and then 2 years later, you're using it to paint the house. And I've always said that Hobloth doesn't mean anything in Britannia. Hobloth is what we call the event here on Earth. Once you step through the Moon Gate, you are in Britannia, and you are attending the Britannian Cultural Festival, or the Minoxian Tinkers Festival, or as I like to call it, North by fucking North. Little Austin joke there. Or North by North Fest. But anyway, you know, so a T-shirt to me doesn't really work within the context of Hobloth. But since it is also kind of doubling as a farewell to Castleton, I'm willing to bend the rules a little bit if you guys think that T-shirts is a really fantastic way to go. You know, kind of mimicking the Origin shirts. I have no idea if you guys are remotely interested in that. I see David is scrolling. What are you looking at? Oh, David's looking at other eBay stuff. So yeah, like I think it would be really important to have some sort of wonderful commemorative trinket, whether it is, you know, role play appropriate or not. I'm totally willing to be flexible on that. Do you guys have any thoughts of something you might want? I'm going to read some of the comments over here. Sempiternal says maybe a more detailed Castleton map. Okay, so that being said, yeah, so the Hobloth 2 Castleton map I thought was poo. The Hobloth 3 Castleton map I thought wasn't terribly bad. A more detailed Castleton map for Hobloth 4, that's a really great idea, actually. I'm a big fan of that. And David's got the Castleton map photo pulled up, which I'll switch to him. So as you guys, so this is, you know, Lord British's property of Castleton here. And the problem with Castleton is the right side of the map is kind of the business end of Castleton. The left side of the map is the adventuring part of Castleton. The problem is that if this map were to scale, the right side of the map would be completely illegible. This map is not remotely to scale by any stretch of the imagination, and it's really, really hard to make a 2-scale map of Castleton without doing some type of inset for the village portion, which is what I did for Hobloth 2. Good in theory, it wasn't terribly well executed. This map was at least useful. So in terms of making a better Castleton map as part of the trinket, I think that's a fantastic idea. I'm wondering of how we can make the map better. Do you have thoughts on that, Sempiternal?
I can get LiDAR images and then go ahead and actually do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough.
I'm sorry, David, can you say that again?
I could just get LiDAR images and figure it out.
Did you
Like
say
physically? Yeah, there's public. Here, let me try to see if I can find it.
Okay. All right. Well, you look that
Because
up.
I make maps for a living, so.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, because what I thought would be really great is if you look at Sebastian Munster. I'm going to pull up Sebastian Munster. Sebastian Munster, which I'm sure I'm going to spell wrong, but Google knows everything. Sebastian Munster made some fantastic maps, historical maps. He's from 1488. And I've looked at his maps as inspiration several times. Not Google Maps, Google Images. And there are some fantastic maps that he's made. This, I believe, is the one that I'm thinking of. This image is very large. Oh, no, it's not. No, poo. See if we can get a larger image of this. So those of you out there watching this, this is totally off the cuff. We are having a very open-ended ad hoc discussion here. If someone wants to pull that image up and screen share and zoom in so we can see it. It's not the highest resolution, unfortunately. And by the way, I don't screen share because I have a really bad luck with screen sharing, and when I try to stop screen sharing, it's not uncommon for me to not be able to stop. I sometimes can't get screen share to turn off, and I have to refresh the browser, and since I'm running the Hangout, it's just asking for trouble. So anybody want to click that image and pull it up? Or not, maybe? Okay, thank you, Paul. Paul, can you zoom in on that? Control mouse wheel up. or Control Plus, or that. All right, so this map, I know it's really hard to see because it's low resolution. I have a many tens of thousands pixel version of this image, but he does these really wonderful maps that are, you know, somewhat useful of cities, but they're this pseudo 3D style, and they show the countryside, and you know they got these just beautiful illumination and deco all around it, which frankly I probably could just rip straight off because I'm willing to bet that they're in the public domain now, but that's, you know, neither here nor there. But you know, if we could have nice renderings of the buildings, we kind of had we had some Scott Jones renderings of the buildings for the Hobloth 2 map, but they just weren't high enough resolution really to be usefully legible, and we didn't have renderings of all the buildings. So, you know, something more along the lines of like a theme park map, you know, that's kind of caricatured would be really fantastic. The reason that I have a problem with that as an event designer is I don't know who's going to do that. I don't, if I were going to do that as an artist, I think I'm capable of doing it, but it would be a massive, very all-encompassing project for me, and it would take a very disproportional amount of time away from the project. I'm totally willing to pay somebody out there if they want to make a fantastic Castleton map. I can pay. I can offer you trinkets. I can offer you discounted admission. I can offer all kinds of things to help with that. The issue is you just have to be good, right? And I will say this again. I've said this many times. I, as of yet, do not have a Hobloth 4 cloth map. High Atlic Dragon, I used his line art and colorized it for the Hobloth 2 map. Lucifuge gave me the Ultima 7 board game artwork for the front of the Hobloth 3 map, but as of yet, I don't have a Hobloth 4 map. So anybody out there, I will keep saying this over and over and over, if you have an Ultima map that you've made and you want it to be brought to life in cloth, if you want a cloth map of your map, let me know. We will use it for Hobloth 4, and I will give you a whole stack of them. You'll get, excuse me, I'll get your map printed. It'll be fantastic. You're gonna love it. It's awesome. But yeah, just rusticdragon@gmail.com. Reach out to me there. But yeah, so anybody out there, if you're interested in doing some, excuse me, some work on making the Castleton map extra nice, please let me know. David, do you have something worth looking at yet? Oh, got the hiccups.
No, I just have the local GIS map. I'm gonna be trying to looking into actual topography maps and trying to import those in because they might actually have that data in this program I use sometimes called ArcGIS.
Mm-hmm.
So I could probably make a overly detailed engineered map, but I don't know if I can actually make like a pretty map.
Ah.
Yeah, so just throwing that out there. Maybe we can use that as a base, put it in the background or something.
More information never hurts. You could always give it to an artist, and then they can get the feel of the topography of the place.
I wonder how Dennis would feel about doing that.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
I don't, because I know he did the Ultima 9 map. But I don't know if he enjoyed it. So I have a hard time asking artists to do things they don't like. I always want to give them a project that they're going to enjoy. Yeah, so Slidell link to the Google Maps satellite view of Castleton, and I'm not going to screen share, but if anybody in the Hangout has clicked that, you can see how the village is super tiny off to the right, and there's this giant swath of land. And if you don't play with the scale, it's just not going to be remotely, it's not going to fit. It's not going to be useful. You need a goddamn poster if you want to have a map. Oh, David's screen sharing. Thank you. Yeah, so look. Oh, David's turning. Okay, so as you look at, and he turned it again. All right, so as you look at that, you can see the village in the top right, and you can see the tiny little roofs, and then you can see the giant swath of land off to the left. And if you think back to the map that David showed earlier that I made, it's the village and the giant swath of land are actually about equally sized on the map. So these are some genuine design, problems that need to be solved if anybody out there is interested in taking care of this. Okay, so making the Castleton cloth map better is definitely a great idea. But I don't know if that'll stand on its own. I was thinking of having some type of, something commemorative, something really exclusive. David says, backpack, backpack. I love me some backpack. Like, what does that have to do with Castleton, though? Give a piece of the Curtain Theater to each person. Okay, so yeah, jar of dirt. I was thinking that too, like little bags of dirt. That would be appropriate. I think we could get away taking little bags of dirt. That would be kind of fun. We can make a song about it. So this is something that kind of makes me sad. At previous events, I had considered wanting to build a brick oven on Richard's property so we could bake bread. I think it's only appropriate that you bake bread at an Ultima event. And I thought that a brick oven by the tavern would be just a wonderful thing to have. And you could go out there, bake bread, play Ultima, make pizza, make loaves. It's a very great thing to have. And I had looked into the possibility of using Hobloth funds to make a brick oven on Richard's property. I liked the idea of Richard lets us use the property for these events. In turn, we improve the property. I really liked this idea that each year we left something that made the property better. And when I looked into that, it got as far as asking Richard about it, and he said, that sounds great. And talked to Dale, and I talked to Dale, and Dale's like, we should put it over here. And Richard's like, we should put it over here. And I'm like, I don't think it should go either of those places. I think it should go over here. And then it just never really happened because realistically, it needs to be built, right? Who's going to build it? It's not, and if we build it there, we're not going to be able to use it there. We'd use it the next event, right? Who wants to build a brick oven to use it whenever there might be another Hobloth? And it never really came together. And now with Castleton being listed, it's kind of sad because the idea of putting improvements on the property that may be torn down if it sells, it's no longer appealing. So there's Joe Garrity once told me that he thought it would be fantastic if we could put a circle of stones on the property. Now, I would love monolithic, 2 times the height of man stones, but obviously we're going to have a hard time with that. I always thought it'd be nice to have an actual shrine out there, but if we could all get mass, fairly big, boulders from a junkyard or a quarry or something, and we make a circle of stones. It's very appropriate to have a circle of stones on Richard's property. That could be a fun thing to have, but again, it's probably just going to get thrown away. It does make me a little sad. But I wonder if we could have some sort of, so capture to do 1B. So yeah, so everybody, I don't think we can dismantle the property. I just really want to throw that out there. I don't think we're going to be allowed to do that. That being, of course I will ask. I will totally ask if there's any building that is dry rotted or something that's beyond repair and there's no plans to repair it. If there is, fucking pickaxes. Let's do it. Richard's going to get some free demolition, if he needs it, and we'll all take pieces. And I will sell them on eBay. No, I'm kidding. Or am I? But But yeah, so I like the idea of taking things, assuming if and only if that's okay. I like the idea, like the burning things is a great idea. We had some ideas that revolved around burning in some of the Patreon discussions, which I will double check with the authorities and things like that. And if that is possible, it will be announced. The tree houses that were infested by the wasps, do you want to burn them, or do you want to dismantle them? Or it's like you let the people that we don't like dismantle them? Is that the strategy? All of the above.
Burn the wasps and then dismantle the.
That sounds fantastic. So yeah, is there any trinket that you guys can think of that would be really great? David, don't say backpack again, because that doesn't make sense.
I said a backpack full of dirt.
Oh, you want me to buy everybody who's going to the event a backpack?
I mean, I don't know.
So, of all the things that I can make with my Glowforge, I don't think backpack is on the list.
And I'm just being smart. Oh, I mean, you got that journal thing going on, so you're already working hard enough.
I'll get everybody a fanny pack.
Ooh,
Yes.
fanny pack.
Yes.
Fanny pack full of dirt.
Yes.
Or as my friend likes to call it, the Manny pack. So, Lord British's backpack full of dirt. So it's, thinking in terms of, honestly, we have emails. Thank goodness. All right, so I'm going to pull these up. Frank Fleury says, say hi for me. I may be on a little later. Hi for Frank Fleury. And then the thing that says not to be said live, which I won't say. And stuff from Santiago. Ooh, fantastic. So Santiago / going back to the map thing, I think a high-quality historical paper map for Castleton would be great. I like that idea because it lets us make a Minox-specific map for the event and then a commemorative, get it really fucking big and printed for not so much as the cloth maps. I really like that idea. Would be great. Something you can frame and look at higher res than a cloth map. I like the way you're thinking. And he included some fantastic attachments, very similar to the types of images that I was trying to pull up earlier. Oh, technology. So cool stuff like that. It's not going to focus because I have autofocus disabled, so suck it. Yeah, these are fantastic images. It'd be really great. And the really great thing about this particular solution is, in addition to letting us have our Castleton map for Minoc, it lets us have a map of Castleton that's stylized however the hell we want. And it doesn't have to work, right? We can play with the scale, we can play with the features, or it can be to scale, but it's a poster. I think that's a good idea. All in favor of Castleton poster map, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye, that's a really great idea.
Greg, you look hesitant.
Get on board, Greg.
Do you have different thoughts there? Okay. All right. David's pulling up his things. All right. I think that's a fantastic idea. That is a really, really fantastic idea. And yeah, I think it's only appropriate that, it would be really nice is if somehow this cool map could really feature not just the lay of the land, but like sometimes maps have those, like the Ultima 3 map has the images on the side. It'd be nice if there were images on the bottom of lists on the lake, SCA, and Boy Scouts, and Hobloth, and all the things that kind of happened there over the years. And it'd be super fantastic if you could get a representative to sign those parts. Stuff like that. It's quite meaningful. And I think, and what I really, really, really like about that is, I think if it's done well enough, it would be something that Richard might even want himself. And, you know, anytime I'm putting together an event or coming up with a trinket, I always ask myself, would Richard want to go to this? Would Richard think this is cool? You know, would Richard want one of these? And if the answer is yes, then I know I'm on the right track. If the answer is no, then maybe I need to reach a little higher and think of something cooler. So I think that is a fantastic idea. So I think we've kind of, you know, unless something else comes along in the next while, that I think that is the direction that I'd like to go for the Farewell to Castleton trinket. I think that's fantastic. Yeah. My mind is already running on places that I could get stuff like that printed and, you know, all that great stuff. Okay, awesome. So in terms of activities, do you guys have any, you know, what can we do to make Hobloth 4 fantastic? Like, I've already got a lot of revisions that I've got on the plate, trying to blend Hobloth 2 and 3, the best of each, into Hobloth 4. Some rules revisions to make things a little smoother, of course, capture the keg revisions, some general combat revisions. I am working very, very hard on the website right now. Yes, I remembered I needed to say this. Motherfuckers, I got an email from my hosting company saying, we're going to be doing routine maintenance to your website between 10 p.m. and midnight on the 15th. Literally the last 2 hours that I was going to be sprinting trying to get the goddamn site up and running. And so I either need to try to get it out early and then post it, in which you won't be able to look at it for the first 2 hours after I post it, or I wait till the next day. It's already looking like registration is not going to be open on the 15th. My aim is to have the website posted for people to look at so you can understand what the event is, be ready, and decide if you want to go. And then, you know, I'll get registration up and running certainly before the end of the month. I think I can safely swear on my left and right nut that the registration will be open by the end of the month. In terms of quest submission and stuff, that'll probably be another month, depending on how that works. But so those of you who are chomping at the bit to see the website, I really, really appreciate your enthusiasm. But several supernatural forces have been against me on this. I lost some. I was trying to switch to a WordPress solution, and I'd spent many, many, many hours working on that, and I lost a lot of that work. And I eventually said, "Fuck it," and I'm just doing it the same way that I did last year with my PHP solution. So I really just frankly threw away a lot of time, unfortunately. But remember, don't cling to a bad idea just because you've spent a lot of time on it. So I walked away from that, and we are back. So the Hobloth 4 site will look a lot like the Hobloth 3 site. But I'm doing things like I'm trying to make, you know, improve text readability, improve chunking, and all kinds of fun stuff like that. Lots of usability improvements. Yay. But yeah, we will have something to look at, even if it's a lot of this will be posted later pages by this weekend. So, you know, stay tuned for that. I'm excited. There's a lot of stuff going on there. I love it when you say phallus, they're sempiternal. Okay, so I'm glad that got stated. So in terms of activities or things that we can do, is there any really big, giant, over-the-top thing that you think we should try to do that just hasn't happened before? One thing, I want to bake bread. I don't really consider that to be over the top, but I think we need to find a way to bake bread at the event because we're playing a goddamn Ultima in real life, and we need to make some bread. If Castleton gets sold and I have never baked bread on Richard's property while playing Ultima in real life, I will never forgive myself. Like, we need like certificates of I baked bread in Richard's property. I mean, it needs to happen. So I think there needs to be bread baking. There needs to be bread slugs for people to fight. Kenneth Berger, welcome, Kenneth. You are a new face, unless my memory is failing me. Can you hear me okay, Kenneth? Can we hear you?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes. Welcome.
Thank you.
Would you like to take a moment and introduce yourself to everybody?
Yes, I am Knight of Camelot Dragon. So I haven't really hung around a whole lot. I didn't even know these things existed until somewhat recently. And I am from Livonia, Michigan.
Excellent. Well, welcome. It's fantastic to have you here. Everybody, you always have a home at the Hearth of Britannia, so glad to have you here. New faces or, not faces, new voices are always super exciting and welcome. So welcome, Knight of Camelot Dragon. Feel free to just jump in, whenever you like. This is totally an open discussion. Have you been following along on YouTube?
A little bit with this one for about the last half an hour. I've been trying to get it to work, but it wouldn't work on Internet Explorer or Firefox, so I had to use Chrome. I finally figured out that it works there. So,
Yep, I'm the same way. Nothing works in IE for me, and Firefox leaks too much memory, so I only do Hangouts in Chrome. And Slide L's gonna drop. Oh, you don't need to drop. I mean, we got plenty of spaces. If you want to leave because you think we're full, we've got spaces, so it's totally okay. But if you're going to take off, that's okay too. So, Knight of Camelot, if you've got thoughts that you want to share, absolutely jump right in.
Well, I mean, I kind of jumped in a little late originally. I've been listening to some of the ideas that you had, and some of them sound interesting. I mean, obviously, cloth map would be kind of nice, but backpack full of dirt. I mean, it was kind of a nice idea. I don't know how it would work out in practicality, but at the same time, it's not overly commemorative. I do agree it's not overly commemorative, but I mean, as for like keepsakes and things like that, or something to take home, I had to think about it a little bit more. But I mean, I do agree that we should do something big and bold and something that people are going to remember. I do intend to come this year, so.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it. So I want to make an announcement. It will be stated on the website, but everybody will be re-interviewing this year. So last year, people who had interviewed for Hobloth 2 got a pass, but because Hobloth 3 was so different from Hobloth 2, a lot of people came that didn't interview. I realized that okay, the website tells you what's going on, but I also interviewed and told you what was going on. I spent a lot of time in the interviews explaining what was going on that I realized later that the veterans didn't get. There was a piece of communication there that the veterans didn't get, and they were lost and confused about some things. And I apologize for that. I am sorry to any Hobloth 2 veterans that felt confused or out of place at Hobloth 3 or underinformed. Because of that, everybody will be re-interviewing for Hobloth 4. Don't get nervous. If anything, it's just so I can make sure that we are all on the right page for expectations. And plus, I like seeing your faces. So yeah, we're going to be doing that. But yeah, so I'm really excited to hear that you are excited to come this year. I hope that works out. David, did you end up with anything you wanted to share? Okay, well, so be it.
I'm trying to think through some files.
So yeah, so I'm thinking, a good, real common thing at these events is a coin. Sir Frank, he's fantastic at making coins for occasions. I think a coin would be great. I've already got some ideas for some other coins for Hobloth 4. Those who went to Hobloth 3 got to use Richard's currency that he had made for Castleton. It is Castleton currency featuring the buildings at Castleton. It's made with real silver and brass and all that, and they're real legit coins. And everybody got to keep one or two of those from Hobloth 3, which Lord British generously let us have. Which, by the way, thank you for that. It was super generous. And we will not be using that currency again, because his royal treasury, as I like to call it, probably can't take another hit because there's only so many. But those coins are fantastic commemorative trinkets because they're not really going to be, it's like currency for a country that no longer exists. But there will be in-game currency, I think, budget allowing, of course, but there will be in-game currency of some part because that's way too much fun not to do. Slidell's holding one up. I'm going to click her. Yeah. Oh, that's one of the Ultima. That's one of the aluminum tokens from Ultima 1. Yeah, there we go. That's one of the ones from Castleton. That's the Curtain Theater. That's one of the coppers. Is that the silver? Yeah. Look at that honking piece of silver right there. So yeah, talk about throwing that at somebody. You can knock someone out from 50 paces with that if you've got a good aim. And Paul's got the No Neck Davy pirate treasure there, and one of the knots. So yeah, we'll have something like that. But yeah, so if we have coins for Castleton, or rather, I think the coins themselves. The point being, I thought made wonderful commemorative items, but unfortunately, those aren't really going to be. I don't think those are going to be on the table this year. Actually, and that being said, it is 9:50. It is 10 till. It's actually time to start transitioning into closing toasts. That being said, if anybody has any closing thoughts about Castleton or ways that we can commemorate Castleton, naked swim across the lake, naked capture the keg, naked dancing, naked maypole, naked other things that I just like saying naked. If anybody, seriously, if you have anything that you think is a really great thing that you want to do, that'll be legendary and epic, speak now or forever hold your C word. And and otherwise, we will move on to closing toasts. Nobody. All right.
And the only thing I can think of is dangerous.
Say that again, David.
The only thing I can think of are really dangerous things
okay,
fighting in a fire pit.
Fighting in a fire pit?
Yeah, you just have a ring of fire around you.
Naked?
Yeah.
Okay, I dig it. Okay, we might be able to do that, right? I'm not promising anything. I will ask. Obviously, it's going to kill the grass where the circle is, but if you just put a ring in gasoline and that's going to burn and it's going to go away. There's ways to make a ring of fire that's safe-ish. Hell, Richard used to have a whole fire thing at his haunted houses. He's no stranger to fire and fire departments and all that.
Actually, wait, yeah. How about Lord Blackthorn and Richard fighting in the fire pit?
Naked?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course.
Now we're talking. I have Paul Vanzalar. He's face palmed so many times. Richard may be down for that. I think what might be really cool. And the problem with this is I'm in Chicago. I'm no longer in Austin. I'm also employed. Thank you for being employed. But the problem with that is, I don't have as much time as I used to. What I think would be so flipping cool is if we could have a massive fucking dragon to fight. Build this big dragon and it breathes fire and we have to attack it. That would be cool. It seems like something very appropriate to have on the property. Have some way to have a giant dragon to fight would be super cool. Yeah, a man can dream. All right, so it is 9:53. It is time for us to raise our glasses to closing toasts. I am drinking delicious carbonated beverage. Knight of Camelot, you are new, so we will make you go second to last so you can see how this works. David, you look like you had a thought there. Oh, you're just making hand gestures. All right, so Beard Commander, since you were late to the game and still managed to say something about justice that we hadn't covered yet, I'd like for you to lead us in our closing toasts.
Castleton, for being an awesome place to have our fantasies come true.
Naked?
Technically, weren't you? You were kind of in the water.
I was not naked. I was mostly naked.
Mostly, yes.
Mostly nude. All right, to Castleton. All right, I'm going to take it from the left as I see it. Golden Flame, you are next.
Well, David took the obvious one that I was thinking of.
Fuck you. Yeah.
So, to finding a way to have our next trip to Castleton involve Naked Chloe.
To Naked Chloe. This is fantastic.
I don't just mean unsheathing Chloe.
I do. All right. It's like, I'm getting like Big Trouble in Little China flashbacks. Like, grasp the naked burning blade. All right. Sempiternal, it's to you.
To the hearth, and to make this next event the best one, and if this is the last one for Castleton, go out with a bang.
All right. 2 explosions.
Literally a bang.
Takis?
Well, to Castleton, to the hearth, finding some C4 to help him make that go out with a bang, and I don't know, maybe one of us winning the lottery so we can buy the property.
To the motherfucking lottery. Jesus. You know, even if you won like a couple $100 million, I can't imagine the property taxes would let you keep it for very long. Slidell, Siderius. Sliderius Liddell.
Yeah, basically to the hearth and to make this a great event and to have fun with the pirates and to do some pretty cool, awesome stuff.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that the Pirates of Oasis could have a large part in Farewell to Castleton. So to the Pooh.
Two boys.
You know, the funny thing is, the first time I wasn't following a lot of the quests that came in for Hoblaw 3, and Alex was reading the schedule, and she's just scrolling, and she goes, I don't remember what it was, but she goes, whatever the name of the quest was, by Pooh. And I go, what? And I look over, and of course it says Pooh. And I'm like, what? I didn't see it. She saw it before I did. And I was like, wow, that it's by Pooh. It made me happy. Vanzalar.
The song is that I have to take a shower. So there will be many showers.
I didn't catch that. Something about a shower? Naked? Okay. To showers, I guess. I didn't quite hear all that. Songs about taking showers. Okay.
We do like to cheer when people at Hobloth actually do occasionally take a shower.
Man, we need to have a private rabble. Actually, after rabble. At after rabble, let's talk about who stinks. So those of you out there, if you want to jump in, I think there's a spot left. So if you want to find out who stunk at Hobloth 3, jump in for the after rabble. That's not broadcast, and what happens in after rabble stays in after rabble. All right, so Kenneth, I think you have an idea of what closing toasts are, and maybe you've watched other Dragons Meets and you know already, but it is time for you to have your inaugural closing toast.
Well, is plagiarism discouraged?
Absolutely not.
Okay, then I will quote an old but now passed on friend of mine who was a very good Renaissance musician to say, here's a health to the company and one to my lass. Let us drink and be merry, all out of one glass. Let us drink and be merry, all grief to refrain, for we may or might never all meet here again.
Excellent. It's fantastic. So the rule of the hearth is just give credit. So it's not plagiarizing if you're quoting.
It is Owen Fife is his name.
There you go. Fantastic. All right. So this has been. This is a personal toast on my part. I noticed something at the last Dragons Meet and the previous Dragons Meets. I wasn't nervous, but I wasn't the same. I wasn't right. You know, I didn't have the energy that I'd had. I'd thought back to what made the previous Dragons Meets great. And I thought I did a better job at moderating previously. I had more energy previously. I don't know why that was lacking before today. And yeah, you can blame the bike commuting. But, I thought long and hard about it. And I realized that I'm busy. And I wasn't letting myself enjoy Dragonsmeets as much as I should have. And and admittedly, there were several times that I was late getting set up for them. I was just, running and running and running. And I actually came to this one consciously going, let's just unleash the energy, be happy, moderate, listen to people better, and really enjoy it and have a good time. This isn't something I have to do. This is something I get to do. I don't think Haley's out there watching, but thank you for introducing me to that phrase. But yeah, I feel infinitely better about this Dragonsmeet than I have about the ones that we've had this year. And so to everybody out there who politely didn't say anything or didn't notice or didn't give me grief for being kind of a wet noodle, I appreciate that. But this is to really truly being back to remembering what it is that brings me here, and yeah, to finding that happy place. So that's what I'm drinking to the happy place, the naked happy place. And with that, this has been another Hearth of Britannia Dragonsmeet. And it is time to go off air and rabble offline, where we can say whatever the hell we want. And as we generally like to do, get naked. So I'm Rustic Dragon. This has been another Hearth of Britannia Dragonsmeet. Greg's like, what the hell am I getting into? Tune in next time in approximately 2 weeks. If you back me on Patreon, you can help vote when the Dragonsmeets will be. You can also jump into an extra backer rabble once a month, which is in the same format as this. If you have any questions about anything that was said tonight, rusticdragon@gmail.com. I look forward to hearing from you. I hope to see you at Hobloth 4. And, have a great night. Walk in virtue, all that fun stuff. Have a good night.